Editions of D&D have really run the gamut on the acquisition of magic items, from being rarer than the rarest of jewels to being as common as fine dining. The rules over the years have gone from "These are the leavings of a mighty ancient civilization, the crafting of which is far beyond the capabilities of mortal men today," to "Magic items for dummies? No problem, Joe. Sure, I'll just whip one up." In 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, we're in the unenviable position of being told both. But if you've run a game of D&D up into the mid-tiers, then you have probably had at least one occasion where a player wanted to find or create that very specific magic item that would finish out what they envisioned for their character. Unfortunately, you know that the rules for crafting don't really mess with the rest of the balance of the game, or the reality of modern adventures like at all. It might surprise you that you can make magical items possible to craft in your games without removing all of the mystery or turning magic item acquisition into a quick trip down to your local Magi Mart. But in order to include crafting, you're going to have to overcome a number of different dangers, including pricing problems, time problems, and of course, different ways of avoiding it, removing mystery, feeling Walmarty, or allowing unintendedly powerful gear combinations that skew your game in one direction or another. When it comes to balancing pricing, I do want to be clear that I'm not necessarily talking about balancing all of the loot that is dropped out in your games. While there are a number of different games out there that put very specific level requirements into each and every magic item in order to keep the power level bound within a certain subset, 5th edition is not one of these games. No matter how much we talk about the bounded accuracy system, there are a few times that magic items or our character abilities just take that system and snap it over our knee. And that's actually for the benefit of your game. So don't be afraid to include a legendary magic item in a low-level campaign every now and again, just so you can see how that's going to influence the progression of your game. But do keep an eye on it because it can get rapidly out of hand. But because creating a magic item is supposed to be a lesser option in many ways than going out and discovering the magic item and having that sense of wonder at uncovering the ring of invisibility, even though you know how fabulously expensive and powerful it is, we want to make sure that crafting magic items follows a much tighter system, which is why when we look at what we have available in the Xanthar's Guide to Everything and the Dungeon Master's Guide, DMs often end up pulling their hair out in frustration. Because both of those systems offer a pricing cost based upon the rarity of the magic item in question, but the rarity of the magic item in question is not actively tied to the value of the item itself, and they're just categorized in the common, uncommon, rare, very rare, and legendary sections instead of giving nuanced pricing to specific magic items. That's why I suggest using a third-party option to set pricing for your magic items at your table. The Sane Magical Items price list, though not my personal favorite, is a community-created and fairly popular option. Also, the MSRP, or Merchant Sorceries Rarities price list, is a go-to at my tables, though recently I discovered thievesguild.cc has a pricing list for magical items available on their awesome website full of tools. And that has most recently been my current go-to. One of the things I like about that is that they don't set any sort of upper limit on how many gold a magical item could be worth, to where there are some items that might just be completely unfeasible to craft. When it comes to balancing time, it's important that creating a magic item takes time, but not necessarily that it should take the time that is suggested in the DMG or Xanthar's Guide. Depending on the sort of campaign that you're running, if you're utilizing the Xanthar's Guide to determine how long it takes to create a magical item, you could be looking at creating a magical item at the beginning of your career, if somehow you had access to enough money to do so, that won't be completed until you've already saved the world. Twice. In order to balance time while also making things make sense in your economy, you might allow magic items to be crafted at half price if the time requirements from the Xanthar's Guide are used in the creation process. This gives a reason why people who are able to create magical items would continue to do so for other people's purchasing, rather than only ever wanting to do so for their own personal use. If your players are the ones who are going to be doing creation, then giving them that option means that large periods of downtime can save them large sums of money. And so if you have those kinds of downtime inclusions in your campaign, this can be a good way to balance things out and give a little nuance. My suggestion is that you should figure out how long it would take to create the physical item itself, a specific item crafted for that specific magic item, and then to add 1 full day of enchanting time. You'd be amazed at how adding just 1 day of full downtime to the creation of a magical item will help to serve as counterpoint to the go, 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 this disaster is coming situations that pop up in modern adventures. It'll help to control the flow of magical items into your game without drastically impacting the timeline of the rest of your story. Because the creation of a magical item should not be a casual event, spending a few minutes of your game time detailing that ritual or perhaps creating some sort of skill challenge that can be resolved in 5 to 10 minutes is a way to add a little bit of pageantry and mystery back into the item creation. Because when it comes to dealing with the mystery of magic items, there's little more important than keeping the feel of mystery and excitement in your magic items. One way that I continue to do that is to use what I call the core trait system. Simply put, I categorize monsters by tier as suggested in the Xanthar's Guide, and I utilize various third-party rules, including the Monster Loot by Anne Gregerson or the Harvesting tab on thievesguild.cc to determine what skills can be used to harvest what components from different creatures. I then assign a gold piece value to the most difficult component to retrieve from any given creature. This gold piece value counts towards any component costs for the creation of the item, and like the core of a wand in Harry Potter, helps to determine some specific traits and to inform any kinds of quirks or the like that I'm going to add to the magic item as part of the creation process. Core traits for me are simply priced at 5 gold for a common trait, 50 for an uncommon, 500 for a rare, 5,000 for a very rare, and 50,000 for a legendary core. I assign to those cores 3 different traits. The first one being its rarity and thus determining its pricing value. The second one being the type and or subtype of the creature that the item was harvested from. And a third being a trait based upon the creature itself. I typically use a damage type or a school of magic for this final trait, and it helps me to inform whether or not a core is appropriate to the magic item that is trying to be crafted. If you've got an abjurative core because you harvested it from a creature with strong magical defenses, that item might make sense for a magical shield, but wouldn't necessarily make sense for a magical weapon. Another means of keeping mystery and avoiding the Walmart feel is to add recipes for magic items into your loot and to require those recipes. Using recipes, I allow the bulk of a magical item's components to be made up of any kind of cost component that the group has managed to gather or that they purchase, but require at least a specific core of a specific type and potentially include a number of smaller cores that add a little bit of difficulty to the creation of the item and help to inform your group as to what they should be hunting for. Including these into the loot is fairly simple by either rolling additionally on the magical items tables and adding the recipes in as free extra loot, or by replacing out art pieces that could be gathered. By setting these as art, you set a price value on the recipe itself, which allows uninteresting ones to be sold to NPCs and new ones to be purchased. They also make fairly excellent replacements for spell scrolls if you have a group that is just not going to be necessarily interested in those. Another means of keeping things from getting too out of hand is simply to make the creating of magic items a specialized skill. There's basically 2 routes that you can go with this, making magic items either a NPC only option or making it to where PCs are amongst those rare and special individuals capable of crafting magical items. If you use the NPC only option, then obviously you have even more gating potential and can add more mystery and unusual requirements to the creation of the items that your players want. While if you give that power to the characters, you're shining a spotlight upon them and making them among the coolest and most powerful members of your world. For me, I think that if you've got somebody in your game that's playing an artificer, they have probably signed on for the option to create magical items, and you should probably let them. If you're going to add magic item crafting to your campaigns, you're going to want to make sure that those magical items have a story to tell. You can learn how to do that in this video here, and grab the magic item enhancement tool to ensure that you have got all the tools you need to improve your magic items and your games of Dungeons & Dragons. Thanks for watching. Happy adventuring.